Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody, to another Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Glad to be here on a Thursday edition. Jam-packed. Chelsea Messenger, our betting insider, will join us in just a little bit. Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, will join us in just a little bit. They'll join us via the IHOP hotline at 869-1240 through November 26th. Head to IHOP to try a special turkey entree just in time for Thanksgiving, like the home-style turkey and stuffing dinner, roasted turkey and gravy over cornbread stuffing. Nice and easy there on that one. We'll give away some HTO as well. We'll get you ready for Thursday night football. We'll go through some of the headlines. K-State playoff chances, not good. We'll go over that here early in the first hour, and then we'll get into it a little more in the second hour. Some other headlines, all kinds of stuff going on today. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good. It's a busy day. Thinking of all the different things to go over today, including the Royals. They've got some news about maybe an additional stadium site in Kansas City, which is interesting. The Shockers playing in Myrtle Beach in the holiday tournament starting today. There's just a lot happening right now. And by the way, we're 1 week away from Thanksgiving at this point. And so things are starting to really ramp up here.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's that quick and that it comes that fast, but it is. And I was thinking, I was like, man, they're already doing the holiday tournaments, and I'm like, wait, it's the holidays.
Yeah.
That makes total sense, actually. I was on a walk this morning. This is unrelated, but it's put me behind by about, 10 or 15 minutes. And a dog comes up to me, stranger dog, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. Like, I can't just leave this dog. And it had a collar on, but I couldn't find the tag, and I finally found it, put it in my backyard. What is the proper etiquette on finding dogs in the neighborhood? Is it? And I reached out to the name on the tag and all that stuff. Is it put him in your backyard or just kind of let him roam free a little bit?
No,
I don't know.
I think putting him in your backyard, but then also at that point, I'm going to start thinking about what I want to rename the dog, because I'm basically taking ownership of the dog at that point.
Well, it's a good dog. She's a good girl.
Finders keepers, right?
Well, I couldn't find. No, I don't need another animal.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't find the tag, and I'm like, oh no, like, am I gonna? Like, I eventually found it. It was like a different looking one. It wasn't a hangy tag, if that makes any sense. We found it. But like, let's say you don't, because I've been in this situation where the dog doesn't have a collar or whatever. I mean, you throw it in the backyard and call animal control? Like,
no, you throw it.
Have other pets.
You throw it in the backyard. You let your kids go out and see the dog, and then you say, "Look, everybody, we have a brand new dog."
Oh no! Not when you already have other. I already have a dog and a cat, and like that. It's not fair to them to just like bring this new dog in. I don't know. I never know what to do, and I'm a big softie, so I can't be the person that just drives by the dog. I'm like, let me see if I can help this dog. And it's not like, I don't know. I love animals, but I'm not the kind of person that's just going to like have 19 dogs because I found them roaming around. Like, the dog's going to have to go somewhere. Like, you've got an amount of time, and like, we'll try and do this for you. But at some point, like, I don't need another mouth to feed,
I mean, it sounds like a match made in heaven. You're on a walk, you're enjoying yourself. This dog comes up, it's fate. I think that you need to keep the dog.
Well, the dog scared the crap out of me, number one, because of course I'm like trying to read stories and prepping for the show and everything. And then all of a sudden there's like this dog right up on me. And I'm like, oh, it's like a golden retriever. So it's fine. It's not going to hurt a fly, but she's a sweet girl. Hopefully we get her home here pretty quick. My other dog's not real happy about it because she had to go get locked up somewhere because, nobody needs that confrontation initially. Our dog we have normally is a sweet girl, but a very protective girl. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not gonna have that happen here. So we'll see what happens. If you live in my neighborhood and you know who I am and you're missing your dog, it's in my backyard. Please come get it. 869-1240 is the number on the IHOP hotline. I guess let's start with this K-State Big 12 stuff, Tommy. There's not a lot to say. The conference just changed the rule. And I know they're trying to like backtrack and say, no, that's how it's written. We're just clarifying it. And it's like, no, that's not how it's written. You literally changed the language. Like on your, it's not written a certain way if you go back and change what it said. Clarifying it is one thing, but you had to change it. Again, like we talked about yesterday, they're getting to the right place with it, but you can't change it and then try to pretend like you're not changing it. You very clearly are changing it. And they're being real shady about it. Like they're not really talking to anybody about it. They're just trying to do it and hope it goes away. And it very well could go away. It's funny that, do you think they even realized this before everybody, with K-State started kind of reporting that, hey, K-State's got a chance to get in here and a pretty good one? I don't think that they probably even noticed that this was going to play itself out.
Right. And even if the intention from the beginning was to have the tiebreaker be the way that they changed the rule or clarified the rule to be, even if that was the intention, and it probably was, that's not the way that normal people interpreted that tiebreaker rule because it was written so poorly. We talked about it yesterday. Now, I've heard a couple of different arguments on both sides that make, I think they make some sense on either side about head to head. And even like I heard one person say, okay, look, let's say that it was head to head, and that's obviously the intention of the Big 12. If you're not taking into account non-conference games and you're not taking into account strength of schedule, then it does become a little bit different because you've got some schools that are playing high quality non-conference opponents and other schools that aren't. And so there are other factors that play into it that you could make an argument that even head to head doesn't fully give you a good indication as to who should belong in the title game. Now, that being said, this is just a mess because of the number of teams in the conference, because of the way things are scheduled, and because not every team is playing every other team each season. If the intention was head to head, and I get that it probably was, and that's the way it should be moving forward, and I understand that, I get it, but the way that rule is interpreted was really, really bad from the beginning, the way they wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I just never know what the right answer is on these things. I think for the Big 12, we talked about this, the clearer answer is just to have divisions, right? And then you don't have to worry. And that's not perfect either, by the way, because those can get lopsided. I mean, we've seen that for years in certain leagues, but I mean, it at least makes it more clear how you get there, right? Yeah. So I don't know. And again, like, had they not had to go through and change this, like if everything was the same and the rule was, well, if there's a 3-team tie and one of those teams is beating the other two, well, then yeah, they're obviously in.
Right.
We probably wouldn't, it wouldn't even be that much to talk about, but it's because it wasn't written that way. And it's because there did appear to be a very clear backdoor for Kansas. Now, look, again, let's talk in 2 weeks and see if any of this actually played itself out. I do think the most likely scenario is that Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Kansas State win the rest of their games. Kansas State has the toughest test to do that by far, having to play KU and Iowa State. But, that's probably the most likely. But what's the most likely? 50% at best that happens. So, it's an unnecessary black eye for the league. And, the timing they couldn't really control is because people started talking about it. But you got to see that. Like, you have to see that when you write this stuff out. Like, there's a little back door we got to close. We don't want that to happen because it's the wrong thing. Like, ultimately, It is the wrong thing. But, it is what it is. You kind of wrote it that way. You got to live with it for at least a year.
Well, you should, right? And I saw a social media post yesterday from Brett McMurphy, College Football Insider, and he was talking about the tiebreaker procedure, basically saying in the event of a multiple team tie, head-to-head wins takes precedence. If the tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams earns the championship berth. So that's kind of his clarification. But then he goes on to say, there have been no changes to any rules regarding Big 12 football tiebreaker procedures, which were agreed upon prior to the season and went into effect August of 2023. That's simply not true. I don't think that's true. I mean, that might be what
it's not.
That might be what the Big 12 wants everybody to think. That might be what Brett McMurphy was told by the Big 12. But the bottom line is that any reasonable person who read the way that rule was written can interpret it a completely different way. So even if that was agreed upon and like the intention of the rule was a certain way. That's not the letter of the law, right? Like that's not the way that rule was written and interpreted by reasonable people everywhere.
It's not, and it's fine. Like I don't know. Again, like if this plays itself out, it'll be really unfortunate. I just don't want to I don't want to get so upset about it before it does play itself out, because maybe it's like a waste of emotion. I mean, again, like these things come up sometimes, but not always. And if it's not going to even come up, like it feels like we're just on a Thursday wasting energy. Like, let's see if it's a thing. Let's see if it's actually a thing, and that it plays itself out. And then, and then we'll go from there. I don't know. Nothing happens really to OU. Oklahoma State, and I get it. Like Oklahoma State, if you beat the two teams you're tied with, it's that simple, right? Like it's pretty that shouldn't even, like, you shouldn't need a paragraph for that.
Right.
If there's a 9-team tie and one team beat the other 8 teams, they're going to get in.
Right.
Like
I get
like
it.
You shouldn't even need to write that down.
No, I get it. And like, I think that even reasonable people would say, okay, so the head-to-head makes sense. The way that should be for Oklahoma State to get in, it makes sense, but that's not the way that it was written. So if you're gonna,
I'm not saying it's
if you're gonna change it for next season. Don't change it in the middle of this season. The other thing, I understand your point about not getting too amped up about it before it even happens, but Kansas State has 2 winnable games to finish their season. The Sunflower Showdown this weekend in Lawrence, and then at home Farmageddon against Iowa State. Now, both Kansas and Iowa State are good football teams, but it's not like Kansas State is playing Texas or OU, or you know what I mean? Like
Kansas would you State, would you rather play OU or Kansas and Lawrence?
Well, what I'm saying is that the Wildcats are going to be favored. They're already favored in the game this weekend. They're going to be favored more than likely at home against Iowa State next week as well. So you're playing 2 games where you're favored to win, right? It'd be different if you were underdogs in 1 or 2 of them. They're going to be favored to win both of these games. And so I get what you're saying about let's not get too riled up about it before it actually happens. But I think that we're going to be looking at maybe there's a good chance, a scenario where the Wildcats do win both of these games. And we are looking at this scenario.
But I totally agree. They should. Again, but the likelihood of all 3, because in order for Kansas State to have this matter, they also need Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to win their next 2 games, right? Otherwise, it doesn't matter. If it's a 2-way tie, Kansas State's out.
You don't want that to happen. I mean, like to get to that.
Even before.
Right.
Well, even before the change.
Before, for sure. But now that quote-unquote change or clarification or whatever has happened, now the Wildcats have got to win both of those games and have Oklahoma State and OU lose one, right? So, I mean, it makes it that much more – the path that much more difficult.
But it's now a different path, right? So like the reality is, and again, I would be mad as hell if I was a K-State fan right now. Don't misunderstand. But what's happened now is you take, I would say of like all the possible scenarios out there of what happens in the last 2 games, the most likely was that all 3 of these teams win their next 2 because they're all going to be favored in those games.
Yeah.
Now, how likely is that? Again, I'd probably say 50%. So then you go on to the next one where Kansas State wins both and each one of those teams loses one. Well, that's less likely, but still possible, and just like sort of a different sort of likely, because whether, Kansas State lost one before the change, if any of those 3 teams goes 1-1, Kansas State's out, right? No matter what happens. Yeah. Like if that's what, so it like in totality, I wonder if we had like that silly like analytics percent chance to make the playoffs. Like I really do wonder what it would have been before and what it is now, because I bet it's not that different, because the likelihood of all of them going unbeaten versus any of them losing one game is probably not that different.
I don't know. I mean, look at
Oklahoma State just got steamrolled by UCF.
You're right, but look at the opponents that both OU and Oklahoma State are playing in their final 2 weeks.
One of them's got a road game at BYU. I mean, look, it's not.
BYU
I don't
is
remember
the
which
worst team in the conference.
I don't think they are when I've watched them play. No, I haven't watched them the last couple of weeks.
By record, they're the worst team.
Yeah, I haven't watched them. To be in fairness, like they may have some injuries or something. I haven't paid any attention to them since they were playing earlier in the league because those games mattered. But they're not. Cincinnati's the worst. It's just Like UCF has the same record as BYU and just absolutely smashed Oklahoma State. So I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I said this yesterday, and I'll bet you $1 that it wouldn't have mattered. And that's why it's like, this is really annoying now, but this kind of stuff does work itself out a lot of the time. And it's just really unfortunate for the Big 12 that we started talking about it before, and now they've got egg on their face. We'll get more into this with Tim Fitzgerald in the next hour, because it is a little surprising, with as forward thinking as the Big 12 has been about things, that they missed this, right? That they let this slip between the cracks, because it shouldn't have been there to begin with. But we can get more into that a little bit later. That game this weekend, and we'll pick it tomorrow. Jason Bean did practice yesterday. What did Kotelnicki call it? Significant.
A lot of reps.
Practice reps, I think,
reps.
something like that. Yeah. So he's probably going to play. I've soapboxed about not getting official injury reports in college. It's ridiculous that we don't do that. But it sounds like he's going to play. And Leipold, the terminology Leipold used way back on Monday was very optimistic, I think. So he's going to play. If he's playing, and I think he will, and you go into that game now, I think K-State's still an 8-point favorite, which is where it's been for a while. This is going to be it will be very interesting strategically to see how this game plays out, because I think that, if you're KU, do you prefer probably a low scoring game, kind of like it played out against Texas Tech? Honestly, if you're K-State, I think you'd like to go fast. And this is like an observation. Like, if I'm K-State, I want Jason Bean to have to be throwing the ball a lot, because it increases the likelihood he turns the ball over. And so, like, if I'm K-State, I want to pick up the pace here and start moving pretty quick in this game and try and make KU throw the ball. And if I'm KU, I think I want the exact opposite of that. I think I want this game to be kind of ugly, to run it and to let them, try to play ball control and just let Jason Bean make some big time plays. But it will be, I think, a pretty big clash of styles. I don't think KU wants a track meet, and I don't think K-State wants to slow this thing down.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that the line is still at 8. And the reason I say that is because if you take into account the common thought that home team, usually gets about 3 points, then really what Vegas is saying is that Kansas State is 11 points better than Kansas is. And I'm not sure. I mean, 11 is a lot, I think, for two ranked teams, for two top 25 teams. 11 is a lot. I would have been more. For me, I would think the line should live somewhere around 4 to 5 points. Like, I think maybe the Wildcats on paper are a touchdown better than Kansas is. So that's kind of where I would put that line.
You and I have disagreed on this a little bit more privately, because we haven't gotten to our picks or anything on this game, and there's been so many injury considerations. I do think what makes it tricky, and this is why it will be a difficult bet, I think K-State's best might be 11 points better. But what we've seen over time is we haven't gotten K-State's best all the time. I think KU has been probably more consistent with what they are, right? And what their ceiling is, because their ceiling isn't as high with Jason Bean as it is with Jalen Daniels. It's part of the reason Lance Leipold and that staff have done such a phenomenal job. Now, I will say, and maybe it didn't catch KU fans off guard, I think it caught most of us off guard with just how much better their defensive players have gotten. And that's a testament to better recruiting and better coaching and all that stuff. But I do think, like, at its best, K-State is probably about that much better than KU. Now, again, that doesn't really mean anything. It just means for the line, like, I get the line. It's going to be tough. It's more of a tip of the cap to what K-State's ceiling is. And it also adds into the frustration of that Texas loss. I do think there is not much of a difference between Texas and K-State and Oklahoma in whatever order. I do think those are the three best teams in the league, but K-State's had the letdown games. They've had a letdown game. They had the letdown game against Oklahoma State. Texas, I don't know that I'd call Texas a letdown game. Disappointing outcome for sure. But I don't disagree with the line. And I'd still, and we'll make our picks tomorrow, and I haven't decided, but I'd still probably lean K-State there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you mentioned the KU defense, and I think that's been the difference maker this season for the
Absolutely.
Jayhawks, right? And I think that's what closes that gap a little bit more because they've overperformed or they've outperformed expectations, I would say, this season, especially the secondary. OJ Burrows and Kenny Logan and Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson. I haven't decided yet either which direction I'm going, but I still, as of right now, I'm a little bit surprised with where that line stands.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, let's get Fit. We'll talk to Fitz about it. See what he thinks about the line. I think it's right. It might be a little strong. It might be a little strong, and maybe it comes down when everybody knows Bean plays, and there will certainly be some money flow into KU when that becomes. Which it's not going to become certain until Saturday morning. But if he practices again today and tomorrow, or really probably just today, that line may move a point or so. All right, when we come back, Chelsea Messenger joins us, our betting insider. We'll talk NFL. Maybe she has thoughts on the Sunflower Showdown. We can find out what else is going on in the betting world. We'll do it next on Sports Daily.
Also, be sure to check out the Daily Tip podcast for more of Chelsea Messenger analysis. Just search BetMGM wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, to Sports Daily. It's Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. Glad to be here with Chelsea Messenger. Chelsea, how are you this morning?
Yeah, doing well. We finally have a good Thursday night football matchup for the first time in what seems to be all season long. So I am excited to hopefully watch some great football tonight between the Ravens and the Bengals.
Well, Al Michaels deserves this after what he's had to deal with. I feel bad for the guy, but this is a good one. It means a lot. The teams are healthy. We get both starting quarterbacks in. What did we do to deserve this? 3.5-point favorites the Ravens are tonight, over under 46. This will, I imagine, inhibit a lot of betting around the country. Are there any sides of it or angles to it that you're looking at tonight?
Yeah, there is one trend that specifically has caught my eye here, and it's really hard to ignore. Joe Burrow against the spread when getting more than 3 points is a blistering 15-2 against the spread. So the line in this one is 3.5. And would anybody be shocked, if the Ravens won this game? No. But I think just by the book here, this is the position where the Cincinnati Bengals usually do pretty well against good teams and as underdogs. We saw it in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They were getting 3.5. Sure, they lost, still covered the number. And Joe Burrow against good teams has been especially good against the spread as well. 19-8 against the spread against teams above 500. So it's really tough to fade the Ravens right now, especially at home, especially on a short week. But I think I'm going to do it. I'll take the 3.5 with the Bengals.
Yeah, taking a look at what the public is thinking for this game, it's right down the middle. I mean, basically 50-50 as far as the money line at least is concerned. Do you think that is there any hesitation with the Bengals because of the fact that T. Higgins is likely out? Does that play a role in anything with Joe Burrow, or do you think that he's got enough weapons where covering that number shouldn't be an issue?
Yeah, he still has Jamar Chase. And here's the thing about good quarterbacks. You see it with Patrick Mahomes, all the time. Yes, having no receivers is a problem, but when one goes down, good quarterbacks can still make the throws to whoever they have out there. And the Bengals still have guys. It's not like they have no one. And there are some other injuries on this one that maybe are significant as well. You look at the Ravens. Ronnie Stanley is out for this one, an all-pro when on the offensive line, one of the premier pass blockers in the NFL. I think that's a huge loss for the Ravens, although it should be noted that Sam Hubbard, defensive end for the Bengals, will be out as well. But Trey Hendrickson is playing, so a big part of their pass rush there. So it's not just all about T. Higgins. I think Joe Burrow should be a good enough quarterback to spread the ball around and maybe make up for the loss of T. Higgins.
Well, what do you make, too, Chelsea, of both of these teams sort of stumbling through it and losing games maybe they shouldn't have lost last week? It's a short week. I just wonder, are there any trends that say it's harder to bounce back from that kind of thing on a Thursday? Are teams generally able to reset for a Thursday, especially good teams?
I do think it's tough, but having a veteran quarterback certainly helps. And I think we see this all the time in the NFL. I think people fall into the trap of saying, okay, well, this is the quote unquote easy part of the schedule. These are the games they should win. We see it every single year. Like, look at your Chiefs losing to the Broncos, who maybe look a little bit better now, but even the year they won the Super Bowl, lost to the Colts. So we see this every year in the NFL. It's the ultimate parity league. So we see this happen all the time. So it could be a buy low spot for both of these teams. But I also think the bottom line is this is the AFC North. I don't know if you pay attention to this division, but it's called the black and blue division for a reason. It feels like all of these teams are so close together that even in down years, like, they contend with one another. So it's a divisional matchup. I think that screams take the underdog here as well. So I do expect a good game, but you're right. Both these teams will be on a short week, and I think the competition is going to be pretty stiff here.
Chelsea, let's take a look at college football. There's a game locally that we have a lot of interest in, but I want to start with one of the more high-profile matchups in college football this weekend. The number 1 Georgia Bulldogs on the road at Tennessee. Georgia is a 10.5-point road favorite. Tennessee had a bad loss, or a fairly bad loss, against Missouri a week ago. Do you think this is a game that the Volunteers can bounce back in, or do you think the Bulldogs can flex a little bit and cover that 10.5?
Yeah, I don't think I'm fading Georgia here. It looks like Georgia has really found their stride, especially offensively speaking. Now Brock Bowers, their star tight end, back in the lineup. And it seems like every single week that people are saying, oh, Georgia's on upset alert. The past few weeks, they have been dead wrong. So I will take the Bulldogs. There is a 10 out there. Georgia laying 10 on the road here. You got to search for it a little bit. It's only available at a couple of shops, but still, I think that is the correct play. Plus, it's a big game for Georgia. You know, they've got to win this one. They have, I think, the longest SEC win streak alive since Alabama was super dominant. So they've got some history on the line in this one as well. And bottom line, I think Tennessee's going to have real issues going against this defense that has shored things up just a little bit. Maybe they give up some points here. I would take a look at the over. But I think the bottom line is Joe Milton of Tennessee is just not very consistent. And you're not going to be able to run against Georgia, the number 3 run defense in the country. So I will take the more dependable offense and the more dependable team. I'll take Georgia laying 10.
One of 4, I believe, ranked matchups. One of the other ones is Kansas State and Kansas, Chelsea. I don't know if you have any angles on that game. It's certainly the one that everybody around here is buying into. It looks like KU's quarterback's going to play. I've seen it anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 for K-State. Any trends that are standing out, or just this is a game it's got a lot of people excited in this part of the world?
Oh, for sure. I think you guys probably know more about me when it comes to the actual matchup. But when we see rivalry games in college football, I think you always take a look at the underdog. And especially if Jason Bean does get to play in this game, I think Kansas has every chance to at least cover the number here, especially if you're getting 8.5. I know K-State has been the dominant force in this rivalry for quite some time, but still, we are talking about 8.5 points in a rivalry where both these teams are pretty solid. That's the best time for rivalry games, is when both teams are pretty good. At least, one team's not markedly better than the other. So I think this line's a little too long for me. I will take the 8.5 with Kansas.
Anything else in college football you're looking at this weekend, Chelsea? I know there are a couple of other ranked matchups like Washington and Oregon State, or Utah and Arizona. Anything else you're looking at for Saturday's college football slate?
Yeah, I really like Louisville playing the U at Miami. Louisville 9-1 this season and in the top 10 for the first time in 7 years. This is a huge year for the Cardinals. Maybe they looked a little shaky against Virginia last week, but still managed to win. And we're not talking about a big spread here. It's 1.5. Meanwhile, Miami keeping it close with an elite Florida State team last week, losing 27-20. But remember what we just talked about. Rivalry games always play closer. And FSU Miami, definitely a huge rivalry. I think it's time to sell high on the Hurricanes, buying in on Louisville here. The Cardinals over the course of the season have been a much better team, 3rd best red zone defense in the nation, and top 15 nationally in third down, run, scoring, and total defense. It should be a tough matchup for Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke, who's been really inconsistent. He was benched at one point in the season and has 11 picks in his last 5 games, plus Louisville playing on Thursday last week, so they have a few extra days to prepare. I'm going to take Louisville here, covering the spread, -1.5 on the road at Miami.
I feel like Louisville's been a good bet for a little while. All right, Sunday NFL slate. I think plenty of good games, always a lot of angles here. Let's dig in. Let's just start with your favorite play for the NFL, or plays for the NFL.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I think there are a couple hold your nose spots this week that you might laugh at me, but I think it is a very buy low situation. Looking at the New York Giants, who look like the worst team in the league by far, but they're getting 9.5 points against the Commanders. This is a divisional matchup. I don't think the Commanders are a good enough team to trust as 9.5-point favorites. It's one thing when the Giants are playing teams like the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a great team when playing bad teams. They're great at beating up on them. And I think for that reason, you could probably take a long, hard look at Dallas -10.5 over Carolina as well. But I'll take the points with the Giants. Maybe it's not my favorite play, but with that same kind of mindset, I think the buy low situation in Arizona is probably a good one as well. Maybe it's time to sell high on the Texans, who have actually been really bad in this position as favorites. We're seeing a line as high as 5.5. Houston, 5.5-point favorites over the Cardinals. The Texans have not covered a single number as favorites this year, 0-3 against the spread. So maybe they'd win this one, but I do think maybe Arizona keeps it close. Everybody is talking about Kyler Murray and the new Call of Duty that's come out. And I think the market is maybe too low on Arizona. So I'll take the Cardinals plus 5.5.
Let's skip ahead to Monday Night Football. If you get past all of the, all the storylines and everything with the Kelseys and the Swifts meeting apparently at the game, there's actually a football game going on, and the Chiefs are 3-point home favorites on Monday Night Football. Any big angles you're looking at with this primetime game?
I think this would be a great teaser leg because I do think this game is going to be close. So you take the Eagles, and they're 2.5, so you get 6 points in your favor, and you get them all the way up to 8.5. So you have to put that with another team. And I kind of hate doing standalone games, but you put the Eagles plus 8.5. And like I said, I think Dallas is really solid at covering numbers when playing against those terrible teams. So it's 10.5. You subtract 6. That is 4.5. So Dallas only needs to win by 5 against Carolina. That or the Niners. Kind of like some big favorites in the teaser market this week. The Niners laying 11 points on the road at Tampa Bay. You can get that down to 5. I think either of those are good teaser legs to kind of combine with Philly. I know that's kind of the chicken way out, but I do think we see a good game between the Chiefs and the Eagles.
I do want to ask Chelsea one more, and then you can give us some props or something. I'm interested in Vikings Broncos. It's the primetime game, but you have two teams that are probably confusing to the betting markets because for whatever reason, right? The Vikings lose Kirk Cousins, and then all of a sudden they look really good. The Broncos, it's hard to believe, but it's true. They're playing better. A game like that where you've got two teams that are sort of beating perception pretty consistently, that's a tough one for me to get a grasp of.
Right, because I think the only thing you could say is, if they're playing other teams, is it's time to sell high on the Broncos, who have stacked a couple of big wins, and then on the Vikings, who eventually you would think would regress back to the mean, especially as a Titans fan. I've seen what Josh Dobbs can't do. Like, we have seen some great games from him and where he's getting the job done, but not necessarily the case, and that's why he's been a long-term backup. So I think this is a tough one to predict. I think if you think it's a coin flip, you take the points. If this one gets to 3, I would be on Minnesota plus 3. But right now at 2.5, it's kind of a dead number for me, and I don't really trust either of these teams.
All right. Any other props or anything outside of the traditional betting that you've got your eye on this weekend?
I'm not sure if any of the props have been released just yet. Normally it's Thursday during the day, but there is one prop tonight that I do have my eye on, and it's Joe Burrow over his rushing prop of 12.5. I think this might have gone up at some places already because during the press conferences this week, he has said that the first time that they squared off against the Ravens this year, he didn't have every tool in his toolkit. And I think he's talking about his mobility because earlier in the season, we know Joe Burrow couldn't move around as good as he normally can. And I know he's not Lamar Jackson. He is not a quote unquote dual threat quarterback, but he's a shifty guy. We've seen it in the postseason. And also we have seen it against good defenses. Against San Francisco, he had, I think, a season high of 43 rush yards on 6 carries. He's had at least 5 rushes in each of his last 3 games. He's hit this number in 2 of his last 3, especially against a good defense, especially in a very meaningful game. I think if he has an opportunity to run for a first down, he's going to do it. The Bengals are 5-5. They need to win this game. They need to win games, period. So I like Joe Burrow's rushing prop as well.
That's a good one. I might follow you on that one, Chelsea. All right, Chelsea, we really appreciate it. Good luck with the bets this week, and let's talk again next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was the host of the Daily Tip and Odyssey Sports Betting Insider, Chelsea Messenger. Insider calls presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. On the way out here, let's give away some HTO. We'll do a couple more coffees. It's going to get a little dreary this weekend, so maybe some coffee is what will get you your fix. Of course, all the best iced tea. You can order your Thanksgiving gallons, by the way, between now and Sunday and get a little bit of a discount. Just go inside one of the stores, East, West Wichita, Derby, and place those orders. Get you a couple of free coffees right now, though, from the brew house by calling Jad at 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. We'll find a winner. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1 right after this. right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Glad to be with you on the program today. We'll have Tim Fitzgerald coming up top of the hour. We'll get more into this Big 12 football scenario. We've got Wichita State basketball a little bit later today. They tip with Coastal Carolina at 3:30. Pregame coverage begins at 2:30 over on KEYN, so make sure you tune in for that. And then you've got Thursday Night Football here on KFH at 6 o'clock. By the way, primetime NFL games from Westwood One available live for free right here on KFH and on the Odyssey app. Tune into KFH tonight for Thursday Night Football, Bengals Ravens, or simply download the Odyssey app and search for KFH at kickoff. Should be a lot of fun. Finally, we get a good matchup, and we're excited about it. I can't wait to see this one. I'm with Chelsea. I kind of lean Bengals here. They're more desperate. I think they're closer to being full strength. They're not all the way there without T. Higgins, but we'll have more on that maybe in the second hour. Congratulations to Jim for winning some HTO Brewhouse coffee. Tommy, you sent me a song that about 4 people now have sent, and it took me a long time to figure it out. Now, it took me a long time to figure it out because I could never give it the proper attention. I didn't know what it was when it got sent because it's always sent without context. And there's not really any context in the video clip. It's just a song. And so I've been at work or I've been all these places where I can't just like blast it out. And last night you sent it. I was like, okay, let me see what this is. And I was like, is that the Kelsey brothers? So apparently it is. Like, what's the story on this?
Yeah, so it's called The Fairy Tale of Philadelphia. It's part of a benefit album that Jason Kelsey and a couple of other Eagles players recorded, like an entire album. I guess they did one a year ago for charity benefiting a local Philadelphia children's hospital, I believe. They did a follow-up because it was such a big success a year ago. So this is another album, and there is a song on the album that features Travis. And so it was released yesterday, Jason and Travis, called The Fairy Tale of Philadelphia, a Christmas song. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's really good. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that. If you've heard the song, maybe you don't like it. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I really like it.
I mean, I don't know. It is good. It took me a minute to figure out what it was. I thought it was going to be a gag, number one. I thought it was going to be a fake thing that was like funny. And I'm like, well, when is this getting funny? And then I went back and I'm like, no, it's not funny. It kind of sounds all right. But I mean, does Taylor Swift need to be worried here?
Well, I mean, my understanding is that Travis recorded his part of it before the Taylor Swift relationship started, I believe.
We've all been concerned that she's maybe using him. What if he's using her to launch his music career?
I don't know. That seems a little unlikely hearing him sing.
I don't know.
It's okay. It's not anything great as far as like his vocal chops are concerned.
All the commercials, yeah. Saturday Night Live. Now he's dropping songs. Maybe T-Swizz needs to, keep her head on a swivel.
I mean, he's an all-around performer at this point, I guess. Apparently it's a cover song. The original was called Fairy Tale of New York, and it was released, I think, in the 80s, and they changed the lyrics to make it fit Philadelphia. And I also read that there's a video somewhere, I guess, of Jason Kelsey recording his part of it. And he actually gets a little bit emotional as he's recording it. Because it's about like brotherly love between the two of them and kind of their sibling rivalry and all of that. So if you go and you actually listen to the lyrics, it might sound funny to you. Like if you're actually hearing it for the first time, I actually don't think it's meant to be like a funny, like gag song. It's supposed to be a legitimate song, I think, between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is too. That's why it was very confusing to me for a little while. Usually when I get the same thing multiple times, it's going to be something hilarious. Right. And so I'm like, all right, like, what's this going to be? And I'm just like, okay, I'm waiting for it. You can find it. I'm sure it's not hard to find.
Do you like it? Are you a fan of it?
I haven't listened to the whole thing, but of what I heard, yes. I was, a fan is a light. Was I impressed that it sounded good? Yes, I was. When I found out it was him, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But I haven't just locked in and listened to it. I was chasing dogs all morning. By the way, I think, crisis averted. We got the dog taken care of, so all good there.
Wait, okay,
869-1240.
You have to clarify what that means, because that could mean a lot of different things.
Neighbors coming to pick up the dog out of the backyard.
So
we're good. No. We didn't call.
You took care of the dog? Oh my God.
Yeah. I did grow up on a farm, and Old Yeller.
I was going to say, do we have an Old Yeller moment?
Nope, all good.
Okay.
All good. I've been. I'm gonna reserve. I'm not gonna say what I was just gonna say. I'm getting in trouble. All right, we'll come back. Tim Fitzgerald is joining us here. We want to get to the bottom of this Big 12 thing. I'll bet you Fitz is fired up about it. We'll poke the bear a little bit when we come back on Sports Daily.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
He's got all the insight on what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It's Sports Daily, hour number 2. Albracht, Castor, Fitz, Jad Chambers producing. Fitz, I try to imagine, like, when I know there's going to be internet outrage, I imagine Fitz, like, over this cauldron with a big stick stirring it up, like, as much as you can. And this Big 12 playoff thing feels like a big old pot of something for you to stir up. I would imagine that you're moderately, if not very, annoyed with this situation with the Big 12, with a little egg on its face here on Thursday.
Yeah. You know, the more I learn about how the Big 12 handled this, the more disappointed I am in the conference. I mean, it's obviously a screw up on their part, not because they left something out, but because whoever wrote the guidelines to the tiebreakers doesn't understand the English language and how to write. I mean, there was a bunch of gibberish in there, so they clarified it by adding something that was really never implied by the original writing and said it was a clarification when it was clearly a rewrite of the rule. And you know what? I'm not happy about when they did it, because you just simply don't change rules in midstream. But the fact that they're gaslighting everyone, saying, oh, no, it's just a clarification, it's not a rewriting, when it clearly is a rewriting of the rule, is pretty damn annoying. And the fact that they continue to lie about stuff, including, I think, about the nature of the meeting with the AD, it's just very disappointing.
What do you make of the tweet yesterday from college football insider Brett McMurphy, where I think he tried to clarify kind of what the tiebreaker procedure was, but then ended it by saying there have been no changes to any rules regarding Big 12 football tiebreaker procedures, which were agreed upon prior to the season and went into effect August of 2023. That, to me, I mean, it clearly seems like that's not what happened at all. So I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from.
I mean, that's being spoon-fed to him by someone in the Big 12 that is trying to cover up a glaring error. Now, let's have some understanding here. It looks like the Big 12 didn't even write these rules. It looks like they copied them from the Pac-12 because they, apply in the same way, and then added some punctuation that muddied it up quite a bit. Last year, I think it was just last year, Utah got in with a round-robin tie. Now, granted, there was no 2-0 team in that tie, but the Pac-12 clarified that since there was no round robin between these three teams, we moved to step 2, which is the highest ranked, in terms of standings, common opponent among all three, and how that came out. And if you eliminate one that lost, then you move to whatever tiebreaker breaks that tie, which might be head to head. And that's just how the Pac-12 did it. And that's the intent of the rule, but it just didn't work out that way.
Fitz, okay. So the rule the change is the correct change. The timing is obviously a joke. Like, you can't change it in the middle of it, but it is ultimately the right thing to do. It's very obvious to us. Yes. I can't believe they missed this in the first place, but they did. But like this is going to become a little more challenging as we make our way through a bigger conference with unbalanced schedules, and we've seen those schedules. And like, this whole thing has me wondering, like, why didn't the Big 12 go to divisions to make some of this quite a bit easier to deal with?
I'll just look north. I mean, look what we're going to have for another, Big 10 championship. You're going to have this West Division with just absolute trash teams. I mean, there's no way around it. All of them are awful, playing for a championship game. I like not having divisions. I think when you don't have divisions, and I'm already unhappy about how they did their scheduling. I thought that was poorly planned. I don't know who's. I feel like a non-sports person is making sports decisions in the Big 12 office. It doesn't seem to be very balanced. It didn't achieve what they wanted. But there are easy ways to break ties. You just have to be clear about it. And it's, I don't know why they get so wordy in writing these tiebreaker procedures. You just go through them pretty systematically and write them. Or at the very least, ask AI to run simulations to make sure there's no loopholes in there that you don't see. I mean, we have the technology to make this a lot easier, but here we are relying on, I don't know, some intern to write the rules of a tiebreaker that make no sense. And it clearly didn't say what should have been said. They can claim it's what they intended, but hey, I didn't intend to wreck my car, but I still wrecked my car. Do I get out of trouble for that? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. None of it does. But you are right, and this is how it should be. I mean, if there was a round robin, it didn't matter what Oklahoma and K-State did. Oklahoma State wins the tiebreaker. That's not the argument. The argument is we were following the tiebreaker procedures, and you decided, oh, we don't like the outcome there. That doesn't work out. Let's change it right now. And that's the difficulty.
What's the mindset right now from your perspective from Gene Taylor? Because I can imagine, this meeting with the ADs. I mean, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall as this went on. And obviously, it's something that I can imagine Gene is, rightly very upset about. Do you have any insight as to how things are progressing and how people are feeling within the Kansas State Athletic Department right now because of this?
My suspicion is Gene is very upset because I was told from someone familiar with that conversation that he was the only one that spoke. I mean, none of the other ADs even said a word, including Oklahoma, that was also caught up in this. And Oklahoma State didn't even say, thanks for clarifying this. Yay, we win. None of that. Just it was Gene spoke and the Big 12 says, okay, we're going to change it. Hey, come on, guys. This isn't how a conference is run. And maybe the autonomy that the ADs gave Brett Yormark in the office and in the expansion realignment has given them the notion that they can just make decisions that affect the conference without really. They clearly made this decision before talking to the ADs. Why do I know that? Because Gene Taylor was sequestered in the playoff meeting. His phone was locked away. He had not been consulted until the other morning, Tuesday morning, when he had a chance to voice his displeasure, which I'm told happened. But I think the reaction now at Kansas State is, okay, fine. We still got to win 2 games, and maybe some chaos will ensue. I'm hoping for the ultimate chaos is that Texas loses at Iowa State and you end up with a 4-team tie. Because then, you know what happens? The tiebreaker rule as originally written applies because nobody has the wins, and you go to the second criteria, which would favor K-State and oddly Oklahoma that kept its mouth shut in this procedure.
Okay, Fitz. So you got to win them both anyway. I think it was the most likely scenario that K-State, Oklahoma State, and OU all win too, but most likely isn't some slam dunk, right? So let's see if this is a problem when we get to that point. And K-State has the hardest path to win the next 2 of those 3 teams. It starts with Kansas. As you look at it, it looks like Jason Bean's going to go. What are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
I'm first of all disappointed that it's not Jalen Daniels because that was the game all of us were looking for. That's no slide to Jason Bean. I think he's done an incredible job this year. I'm intrigued that he's able to bounce back from both a knee and a head injury that appeared to be a minor concussion that quickly. That's impressive. But how healthy will he be? And as Chris Kleiman said, the quarterback doesn't really matter pre-snap because you have to worry about all the stuff that this offense presents you pre-snap to get lined up right. And then how they execute that play might vary. Jalen Daniels might run better. Bean might run faster and throw harder. I don't know. but you still have to defend the offense. That's what it comes down to. Post-snap, that just happens. The quarterback plays in the way they play. Pre-snap, though, is the problem. That KU's offense does a marvelous job of getting defenses confused and misaligned, which leads to big plays.
Something that Jacob and I talked about a little bit earlier in the program that I hadn't really thought of before, and I'm actually going to give him credit. He made a point that I thought was kind of spot on. Comparing these two teams, it almost seems like throughout the season, Kansas State has had a little bit more of maybe a little bit more roller coaster-ish. Like the highs are pretty high. The lows can be a little bit more disappointing, where Kansas, you kind of know what you're going to get for the most part throughout the majority of the season. Really not as big of, valleys and peaks throughout the season for the Jayhawks outside of the injury to Jalen Daniels. And so when you're looking at the line for this game right now, it kind of stands around 8 points, 8.5, somewhere around there. I, for whatever reason, as of right now, can't really put my finger on that line. I almost thought it would be a little bit closer, maybe more like a 4 or 5 point line. But do you think that has to do with the fact that when Kansas State is playing at the top of their game, their ceiling is pretty high, but they don't always play to that? Is that kind of what you're seeing with the line right now, or how do you assess that?
Uncertainty at quarterback. I mean, just having Jason being back is one thing, but having him back not healthy is troublesome. This line's been kind of volatile too. It seems like it started off around 6.5. We had it at 9.5 on one book at one point. Now it's settled in at 8. I think that's about right. I think Kansas has progressed tremendously, but in terms of how these two teams match up, I think this is a game K-State should win again. So I'll just be interested to see how it indeed plays out, because the change here, we keep focusing on the quarterback, but the change for Kansas is actually the defense is so much more efficient, so much more able to stop opposing offenses and keep the game from turning into shootouts, which makes the outcome so volatile. You can't really decide what's going to happen with the outcome. So this defense is much better for KU.
Fitz, when we look at this season as a whole, and KU being here and K-State in the mix again, and I want to ask you this in reality's sake for folks. Texas A&M is open. I think both of the coaches in the state of Kansas would be great fits there. And Texas A&M is not the same as Michigan State. It's not the same as Nebraska. It's not the same as all of these. This one, I think, what was the term we used, Tommy? Like it's a little bit of like butt pucker time for K-State and KU fans when a job like A&M is open, because it's one of those jobs.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yes, it
can
is.
pay
They've
you a
got
lot
the
of
money and the recruits.
No,
It's just not.
No, it isn't. It's not. You have such an NIL mess in that locker room. You've got so much talent, all wanting to be stars. That program didn't run into problems because it doesn't have resources. It ran into problems because it misused its resources. And now you have to untangle all of that while the athletic department pays off a $75 million bill. And you have expectations from fans that they should be Alabama or Texas, when I don't see that happening. And
Texas.
Culturally, Chris
Texas
Kleiman
hasn't done
and Lance
anything.
Leipold, well, look, that's the perception down there. Everyone thinks Texas is God over A&M. I agree with you. They haven't done anything. But Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman are upper Midwest guys. They're not going to the Houston, Texas region to coach football. But this is absurd how the media now doesn't even check on putting out lists. They just put out lists. They don't do hot boards like these with the selected guys. These are the guys that are gonna take the job. Chris Kleiman.
To be fair, don't you think the two coaches though? The lists right now are coaches that would be good coaches for A&M to hire, and I think both of these guys clearly would be right there. That's the flattering part. A&M is money's not a problem. We know that they'll be able to pay whatever. But we've seen, despite the failures, they continue to recruit well. And I just want, like, if A&M gets this hire right, it's going to be the kind of coach that both of these coaches are, a culture builder, an actual coach, right? Just a phenomenal coach, because the recruiting to a lot of degree is going to take care of itself.
No, I mean, these coaches don't want to deal with that level of NIL mess. They don't. They absolutely don't. You've got a fan base now that thinks they can just go buy the best players and somehow that's going to make them the best team. And that's not how football works. You have to have a cohesive locker room. They have a minefield for a locker room. They have so many egos in that locker room that they've collected. I don't know how you're going to unwind that without literally doing what Dion did and run off a ton of players. I think
Dion ran off bad players, to be fair. He ran off bad players. He didn't run off 5 stars, not on purpose.
I don't care why he ran them off. I don't give a crap why he ran them off. You have to have a good locker room, whether it's in talent or in character. They don't have the character, and that's harder to fix than the talent issue with the transfer portal era. I'm telling you, they'll get a coach, but it's not going to be either one of these dudes. If I'm a fan worried about jobs, if the Big Ten West starts cleaning house for their crappy coaches, those are the jobs that these guys might be interested in. Their recruiting roots, their cultural roots, and also they have ties to that region, just in family. So those are the jobs that'd be more worrisome. I think the SEC isn't. Look, if you're in for a money grab, Jimbo Fisher set the course. Go get your money, do a crappy job, get paid, and go buy a Caribbean island. Because if that's what you want out of coaching, go be it. But both these coaches want to coach winning football teams and do it the right way. And right now, Texas A&M is the place to do that.
Yeah, for the record, I'm with you, Fitz. I think it's a non-factor, and really not even because I don't think either one of those guys would be interested. I just don't think Texas A&M is going to target either one of them. I think they're going to go for somebody that can make a big splash, and whether that's a Deion Sanders or somebody that's got Lane Kiffin or somebody like that is a bigger name, bigger splash, because they don't. It's not about, for them, the culture and what team building and all of that. It's about NIL.
It is about the culture. They haven't gotten it right.
It should be. They haven't gotten it
right.
But I don't think
in
it's
College
about that
Station,
for
Texas,
they don't.
It is.
It's about buying the best team possible. That's what Texas A&M does.
Well, that's what they've tried to do unsuccessfully. But what for them to succeed, and this is my point to the original.
They're not targeting either one of these guys.
It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if culture, and all of us can agree, like whether you think it's weird, and I do, or whatever, like the culture down there is incredible. Like it's unlike anything else. The right coach just embraces all of that and puts them back on the right track. I think A&M can get it done. And obviously they haven't been doing it the right way. That's why I would wonder if they do go for somebody that embraces that style more, because it hasn't worked otherwise. And that's why, if you're looking for culture guys, there are 2 here. Now, maybe Leipold and Kleiman aren't interested. I have no idea. I haven't talked to either one of them about it. But it just, like, if A&M's ever going to get it done, those are going to be the kinds of coaches that are going to have to get it done there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how anyone succeeds in the SEC long term that isn't Alabama or Georgia. I don't see how you can prop it up for that.
But why do you think that they have succeeded? Why do you think that they succeed?
Because
Georgia wasn't before Kirby Smart got there.
What's the answer?
Sorry.
Well, he's found a way to get elite athletes who buy in, and that is a rarer commodity that defined is those guys that will be team players. Guys, I was blown away by the quality of character of the Alabama players I met at the Sugar Bowl last year. And I got to be honest, I've covered a lot of bowls, and I meet these other teams. I'm like, these dudes wouldn't cut it in the K-State locker room, whether it was Bill Snyder or Chris Kleiman. There's a lot of me in this conversation, and that's not how those teams are built. You got to find the right guys that can play at the right level, and Alabama and Georgia right now have that market cornered. Maybe Ohio State's into that conversation, but everyone else is grabbing the great players who don't necessarily make a great football team. If that, you got to understand what I'm saying there, that they don't care about how they fit into the team. They just want to get their stats and get their thing, whether it's NIL money or a draft position. And you can't win in college football doing that. You just can't. You might get lucky once in a while with the right breaks in the right time. But man, if you've got a broken locker room and not everyone rowing in the same direction, you're going to end up with what Texas A&M did: mediocre football and a complete mess of a locker room for the next coach to unsort.
Fitz, real quick before we let you go, K-State basketball, Jerome Tang finding a groove. Maybe it is Cam Carter. Maybe he is the second scoring option because, man, he's not afraid to let it rip.
Oh, he's a different player, and he's shooting with more confidence. Got back to his defensive roots in that last game. When he took it to the hole and dunked it one time, that was a different Cam Carter. He's more assertive, and that's good. He has to be right now with them shorthanded. They'll have Arthur Kaluma back on Friday down in the Bahamas, or Ryan Gilbert's down there covering for Go Power Cat. And we don't know when Naquan Tomlin's coming back. Kellis Robinette had a story about trying to get into the diversion program. That process has started. The charges are being cleared up as we speak. So we'll see when Naquan comes back, but I won't be surprised. I kind of thought it might be before the Bahamas, but that legal stuff didn't get sorted out. So I think it'll be shortly thereafter. I would imagine if it progresses at normal times. And then you'll have to kind of put it back together once you start getting back these guys. I mean, they played the other night with 3 guys that were supposed to be in their 8-man rotation. And that's a significant loss. But we'll see what they do in the Caribbean. They looked a lot better on Monday night, but they also shot the ball better, and that makes coaches look brilliant.
Yes, it does. All right, Fitz, what do you guys have? You mentioned some of it there with the basketball coverage. What's up right now at GoPowerCat.com on the football side?
Man, we've got the PowerCat pregame podcast is up. It's a long one. We had a lot to talk about with this KU game. This is a good KU team, and I feel like the guys on the staff that broke it down. Ryan Walsh did a marvelous job, communicating how good Kansas is, where the weaknesses and strengths are. So go listen to that. We've got some daily deliveries. I did a Deep Purple, a longer video on the whole thing going on with the Big 12 that happened. I did that on Monday before the official decision was made. So there's a lot of stuff. We got so much stuff coming too.
All right, go find it at GoPowerCat.com. You can follow Fitz on social media at Life of Fitz. Enjoy the game. It's as good. It should be as good as it has been in recent memory. Let's hope it delivers.
Yeah, I do too. The fans deserve it of both fan bases to have a real, competitive game. We haven't seen that. K-State's won 14 in a row. 15 will be a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. All right, there goes Tim Fitzgerald. We appreciate it, Fitz. We'll talk to you again next week. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. More Sports Daily with Albracht and Castor right after this.
KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Albracht, Castor. Primetime NFL games from Westwood One available live for free right here on KFH and on the Odyssey app. Tune into KFH tonight for Thursday Night Football, Bengals, Ravens, or simply download the Odyssey app and search for KFH at kickoff. IHOP hotline's back open, 869-1240. By the way, through November 26th, you can get special turkey entrees at IHOP just in time for Thanksgiving. Home-style turkey and stuffing dinner, roasted turkey and gravy over cornbread stuffing. I'm getting in the family, my bigger family text thread today, what everybody's bringing for their Thanksgiving back home. And it's like, I get it. You're not going to make a thread without us, but do I really need to sit here and be, bombarded with, I'll bring the prime rib and I'll bring the turkey and I'll bring this and this and this and this. And I'm just like, yeah, we'll be here working.
You can live
Thanks a lot,
vicariously
everybody.
through them, though. I think that as long as you're getting pictures and video of what it all looks like.
That's a terrible idea. Yeah. Like we look, we're going to be fine. Like we work, like it's a crazy, crazy time of year up into the day. And then I actually work TV the day of. So it's not, we're going to throw some stuff together. It'll be fine. But I just don't need I don't need it in my face. You're out next week. You're traveling for Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah, my wife's sister and her family, they live in Dallas, and so we're leaving to go to Dallas this weekend. We'll be there all next week for Thanksgiving. It's the first time that I've really gone out of town for a holiday. Usually I'm here, and people are coming in to Wichita, but we're going to Dallas this weekend. So yeah, it's traveling with a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old in the car for whatever, 6 hours, 5-6 hours. That's going to be fun, but we're going to be doing that this weekend.
It's easier in the car than it is flying. At least you don't have to fly.
Yeah.
That's certainly good news. Yeah. Well, we've got kids out of school the week of Thanksgiving. Like why we don't need that. Like why did we do that? Nobody needs that. I guess I say that as you guys are traveling for the week, but like for Thanksgiving, people are usually just kind of traveling at the end of the week. Like, why do we need a week off? Now we got to figure out what to do with our kids for a week.
I don't remember.
Maybe this is just an us problem.
I don't remember.
Oh, no. This is a this year change,
right?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. This was a this year change. Like I don't know. Kids feel like they have more time off, and I'm not sure why. And I'm not smart enough to there are a few things that I just don't understand about, the way it is now versus the way it used to be. One is it feels like they have a whole lot more days off than we used to. Two, it's that they only have PE like one every 3 days, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the other one is I can't figure out what grades are now. And look, my oldest is only in 3rd grade, so maybe it gets easier. But like we get like the report cards and stuff, and I don't know what I'm looking at. Like it's not like for us, it was easy, 1 to 100. It's clear cut. Like you know who the smart kids are. They get the big 90 grades, and who's not. It was a little simpler to understand. And I'm just not smart enough to understand it. So I get that stuff and I look at it. I'm like, what are we doing here? But yeah, days off. It just feels like there are a ton more days off. What did we have it's like cold weather days off. And I'm like, what? Yeah, the one that got me, and I get it for kids, the colleges get off when the temperature's cold sometimes. And I'm like, do we not think 19-year-olds know how to put on a jacket? Like, what are we doing here? Why do colleges need to go because it's dangerously cold temperatures? Wear a jacket and go to class.
Again, this is another example of old man waving at clouds.
Yeah, I know, but it's also an example of, I think sometimes, and, forgive me, but, like I'd like to also just randomly not go to work for some reason. It'd be a lot easier for me too. Like oh God, it's cold. I need a cold weather day today. That'd be great, right? Like I need a cold weather day. It's cold out there. Let's just stay inside all day.
But yeah, you'll just have soup and you'll be good. You'll warm up very quickly.
Let me tell you something about how much I hate the cold weather. And when I was dating my wife early in our relationship, and I don't know why this came out, I have a suspicion that we were out, having a good time, and my normal, like, guarded, like, things when you're dating somebody you would never say out loud because why would you? I used this term one time, and it's a very true term. And like it was the winter time and whatever. And I think I think I said something to the effect of, I'm cold to my core. And she still 10 years later makes fun of me for saying that. And I don't know why I said that. It's a true statement. Like when I get cold, like it goes all the way down inside. Like I can't, like I hate being cold. It makes me angry. Like it's hard for me to warm. Like I would much rather be hot than cold. But I still get made fun of for that, by the way, cold weather. And maybe it does have something to do with the reason I like hot soup. I don't know, but I do not like being cold. But I don't need a day off because it's cold outside. I'll wear a jacket.
I invited you a couple of weeks ago to the KU game when they played Oklahoma, and it was cold and it was rainy and just like
That's
the
right.
weather was bad, and you couldn't go. You had to work and kid stuff and whatever. And I totally understand. Now I'm kind of glad you didn't go because you probably would have been miserable and you would have been just a terror to
Oh,
be
no, no.
around.
I would have looked like Ralphie in the Christmas Story. Right? Like I like it's fine. I deal with it. I have former coworkers, and I would like, like anything below, I don't know, 55, 50 is perfectly appropriate gloves or earmuff weather for me. Like, and I got no shame in that. Like if I'm cold, I'm going to bundle up. Now, my version of cold might be different than your version of cold, but like I have no problem putting the gloves on when it's like 49 degrees outside, or the earmuffs. Like I can't put on a beanie because you got to protect the hair. But but I got these earmuffs that like go around the back of my head. I wear those things all the time. It's great. I'll just bundle up. I would have looked like Ralphie. I would have had like 9 layers on. My wife makes fun of me because I'll get the snow boots out when there's no snow, and they're not like, they're just like waterproof boots. But she's like,
Right.
it's what are you doing? It's not like, I'm like, just leave me alone. I'm gonna function as a normal human. When it's cold outside, this is what it's gonna take.
I think a good rule of thumb for these cold weather days is if it takes you longer to get dressed and bundle up than the length of time it takes you to get to wherever you're going, at that point, just stay in. It's not worth it. Why would you spend
No.
20 minutes in getting bundled up and getting dressed if it's going to take you 10 minutes to get to your location?
Does cold weather make you angry? Like there are fewer things. There aren't very many things that bring like instant white hot fury for me than just being cold. Like a snap cold. Like if I go
No,
outside and it's real
no,
cold and windy, and it, like as soon as I get back in, like I'm just mad about it.
no, not at all. In fact, I think the only time, if it gets cold enough, I guess maybe. Like I remember when we had that brutal cold snap when you had to like
Yeah.
open your cabinet doors and keep the faucets running, and when it was like
Yeah.
negative 30, like at that point, yeah, like that's gonna make you mad because that's just stupid, right? But just normal cold, nah, it's not that big of a deal.
There are some lunatics out there who like being cold, like who like and enjoy the cold weather, and wish for mountains of snow and ice to deal with. So I guess to each his own. All right, Wichita State plays today, Tommy, 3:30. This is the game. Like of all the games they're likely to play in this tournament, this is the one that you'd like to see them not struggle with in any way whatsoever. It's almost, I mean, it's more or less a true road game, but like you've got to be able to just go win this one, at least based on the perceptions of these teams. I would say that this needs to be a pretty, what is the line? I actually haven't checked the line yet. I'm going to do that right now as we talk about this. This needs to be the one that they struggle the least with if they struggle in this tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's something where when they're playing each other, it's been a long time since these two teams have matched up.
9.5 is the line.
It's been several years, and so I don't know much about College of Charleston. I just know that as this program is headed to
Coastal Carolina.
Oh, that's what okay, yeah, Coastal Carolina. Sorry, that
Yeah.
totally, I got that wrong. It's been a while though. Like, and I really think that as they go to this tournament, it's going to be the first opportunity for us to really get a good handle on what this team looks like when they're playing back-to-back games, and in a setting where I think that I agree with you when you mentioned this very first game should be the first game that they're favored in. Like it should be a game where they should be comfortable. Like they should have a comfortable win today. From that point on in this tournament, I don't really know, but I think that this very first game, you ought to expect them to cover that number.
So they are playing in I don't know if this gets counted as neutral because it's in one of these invitational. This is a true road game. I mean, they're playing in Coastal Carolina's floor. So I don't know that does need to factor in getting that true road game first, I suppose. But I do like the number. I do like the number here. The only game that Coastal Carolina's played is against Piedmont, I think. I don't think they've done much.
Yeah, and they
yet.
won by
so,
2. They won by 2 against Piedmont University.
You got to factor in and think about when you're looking at this game the fact that Wichita State's not only played 3 games, but they had the exhibition and they had the trip to Greece. This should be an opportunity for Wichita State to have far more, and I think Coastal Carolina has a bunch of new players too, and they haven't played much. So I do like the number. I like Wichita State. I like the number. Don't have a hot take on the over under at 145. I'd probably lean under. But I do like it. And after this one, then you get the big tests. This is a fun tournament. We talked about this yesterday. I love it. And you know what? Even though this is the team that I believe is lowest in the RPI, it's or the Ken Palm, I mean, it's either them or Wyoming. It is a true road game, and we haven't seen this team do that other than go into Greece. So that does give us something here. But, as far as X's and O's, I mean, there's not anything that you look for. Like, right, for K-State, we know we want to see a second score. For KU, it's, KU's a different scenario altogether. But for Wichita State, it's just kind of like we just want to see him play well again, right? Like, I don't think anything that we haven't seen so far is something we need to see. We just need to see him play well with the version of what we think they're going to be.
It should be an opportunity today for the Shockers to shoot the ball well. It should be, right? I mean, the Chanticleers
I don't
gave
know
up
enough
86
about them, but
points to
you'd think
Piedmont
so.
University in their opening game. So you would think that, if all goes according to plan, the Shockers should shoot the ball at a pretty effective clip today. That's going to be what I'm looking at. I'm not sure. And I don't know enough about the Chanticleers, to be able to give you like a full detailed scouting report. But just from the very small sample size in their opening game, it makes me wonder if defense is an issue for them.
Tommy, Piedmont is a Division III school. And they had to like get him at the last minute. Now I'm really starting to like 9.5. Like I don't know, man. Like and again, it's not fair because that was the first time they played and all this stuff, but I don't know. This feels like maybe it should be one that that Wichita State flexes just a little bit on. Maybe I'm changing my opinion on that just a little bit. Maybe this needs to be a big win.
Yeah, and
even on the road, even as a true road game.
Yeah, so let me tell you a couple of other stats here from Coastal Carolina from a year ago. They won 11 games last year. Now I
think they have all new players.
Right, they do.
I do think they have all new players.
They only have one starter from last year returning, but they were 310th in field goal percentage last season and 337th in three-point field goal percentage last season. They were 333rd in points allowed and 332nd in three-point defense. So on both sides of the court, they were not good last year at all. So, and they gave up 86 points in their opening game to Piedmont. The Shockers, you should see them have a fairly dominant victory today.
Let's get on the Shockers. Let's get on the Shockers minus 9.5. I think we've talked ourselves into it. I hadn't checked that line yet this morning, or really, I've been looking ahead to the other games, which is always dangerous. But let's get on that 9.5. I'm going to ride that. All right, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Last full segment coming here on the show. What do you think about that one? We'll look at it. Let's talk a little about this Thursday night football game, Tommy. Cincinnati-Baltimore. You'll hear it on KFH. I love this game. We'll hit it next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Thursday Night Football coming up tonight right here on KFH and on the Odyssey app. Tommy, we heard Chelsea say she kind of likes the points there with Cincinnati. I kind of like the money line with Cincinnati a little bit. The points are never a bad thing, but maybe the points are good because these games tend to be close. Cincinnati feels like they're in a little better spot. I think what's interesting about it, though, is Cincinnati's pass defense has really been good, not really their run defense. Baltimore's been running the ball, not really throwing the ball. That's sort of interesting to me. And what in the way this might play. Of course, Cincinnati's offense is balanced. They can do kind of either way on offense for the Bengals. But that is an interesting matchup for the defense of Cincinnati against Baltimore's offense.
Yeah, I'm going to ride the Ravens in this game tonight. I really like them. I like them to cover, honestly. I don't think it's going to be that much of a struggle for Baltimore to cover that number tonight. I really don't. I mean, it's in Baltimore. The Ravens, with what they've been able to do running the football against improbable odds, right? I mean, they've lost and been banged up with their running backs. They've got a guy named Keaton Mitchell who honestly he's
explosive.
He's been running the ball really well. We had never heard of him before the start of the season. I like Baltimore tonight. I don't have a ton of faith right now in the Bengals defense. CJ Stroud shredded them up last week. And so, for that reason, I'm going to take Baltimore. And I think that they can cover the number tonight.
I think it was more of, look, you got to realize Houston can't run the ball, and they ran the ball really, really well against them. That's the concern for me for Cincinnati. It's not Lamar Jackson as a passer. It's all the running backs they have.
Yeah, I get that. And I understand that for sure. I just think that because of the way that, Lamar, I think, has figured out the right way. And I know that it took a little bit of time with the new offensive coordinator in Baltimore to really kind of get things to gel with Lamar Jackson. And, he's not played his ultimate best football this season, but I think that he's, some of those wide receivers they have come into their own. Zay Flowers looks like the real deal. Of course, he's got Mark Andrews. I'm not sure that defensively for Cincinnati, they're going to be able to limit what Baltimore wants to do as far as running the football and then what Lamar can do with his receivers.
It was a 3-point win in Cincinnati for Baltimore earlier. So Baltimore, remember, got out to the huge lead against Cleveland. And also remember, they beat Seattle 37-3 and Detroit 38-6. That's all been within like the last month. So I get you too. And maybe Cincinnati is a little bit of fool's gold, and I'm telling you, I don't lose as much money on any team in football other than the Bengals. Like, I lose more money on the Bengals than any team in football. And maybe that should tell me to just stay away tonight. I probably won't because I like the game.
And think of the opportunity, by the way, that Baltimore has to really put their stamp in that division, right? Like, you win, you beat Cincinnati, they fall to 5-5, and you're 8-3, I think would be Baltimore's record if they win the game.
Yeah.
And then you add into that the Deshaun Watson injury with Cleveland. Really, from that point on, Cincinnati is not out of it, and either Cleveland really isn't either. But it would be a 2-horse race, I think, at that point between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And so it's a crucial game, I think, for Baltimore to sort of separate themselves from the rest of the pack. But Cincinnati, if they want any chance to win the division,
they're back. Cincinnati's back
is.
Cincinnati's back's more against the wall, I think, than Baltimore. Like, if there's a team more desperate, it is certainly Cincinnati.
For sure.
Because even if it doesn't like keep them out of the postseason, which I don't think it would make their chances to win the division really, really, really difficult. At that point, you would then be 4 games behind Baltimore, basically, in the division race with, what are we going to have, 7 games left? Like that's going to be pretty unlikely. So that's honestly, that's kind of a part of the reason that I lean Cincinnati, is because it's Burrow in that sort of scenario. I wish Cincinnati was healthy. I wish they had T. Higgins. He clearly means a lot to that offense. But let's also remember, too, Cincinnati was a Tyler Boyd bad drop away from winning that game in Houston. And, we're having a totally different conversation here today. So I don't know. We'll see. I love the game. You'll hear it on KFH tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll make our picks. We'll come back. We'll tell you what else is on the networks here on the Odyssey family as we wrap up Sports Daily right after this.
With over 45 years in business, Thrasher
All right, that's it for us on a Thursday. Big Friday coming up tomorrow. As always, we'll talk to the voice of the Wildcats, Wyatt Thompson, tomorrow, getting a look ahead to that Sunflower Showdown. His perspective will be great on it. We'll also make our picks. Paul Savage comes in. We'll get you ready for sub-state high school football playoffs a little bit. Coming up today, Jim Rome at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2. Pre-game coverage of Wichita State men's basketball against Coastal Carolina over on KYM begins at 2:30. You've got the Chris Kleiman show right here, K-State football on KFH at 6. You've got the NFL on KFH, Cincinnati, Baltimore at 7. Busy night. Tommy, enjoy the day.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you back here for a Friday edition of the show.
For Tommy and Jad, I'm Jacob. See you then.